Performances every weeknight from 7 on BBC Radio 3. The best seat in the house.
New celebrities get the call to Strictly Come Dancing. Watch the warm-up show this Saturday at 6 on BBC One.
The lunchtime news now on BBC One with Sophie Rayworth and Louisa Preston.
Freak storms sweep through parts of central and southern England. Eyewitnesses say they saw tornadoes ripping off roofs and overturning caravans. Gordon Brown prepares for his first conference speech as Prime Minister, still refusing to be drawn on an autumn election.
And I've said before, I'm not going to give a running commentary about what my thoughts are on this or that, other than about the policy issues of the country.
Two children are amongst 5 people killed in a head-on car crash. Police say one car may have been racing a bike. And more protests in Burma, the biggest demonstrations yet against the military government.
Later on BBC London, as fierce winds hit Luton, we'll be live with the very latest across the region. And it went westwards. Could it now head to the east? Will the congestion charge come to Greenwich?
Good afternoon. Freak storms have swept across southern and central England, damaging scores of homes and uprooting trees, with many eyewitnesses claiming to have seen tornadoes. Up to a dozen squalls with violent winds of around 50 miles an hour hit Farnborough, Luton, Nuneaton, Northampton, Cambridge and Nottingham earlier this morning. One resident described the area around his house as a war zone, just complete devastation. Robert Hall is in Farnborough. Robert.
Well, Sophie, we're just on the edge of Farnborough here. We're talking about an incident that began about 7 o'clock this morning. The storm sweeping in from west to east. Just an indication of its ferocity. Take a look at the tree behind me there. The whole of the top of the tree, all its branches ripped off and strewn across the road. On the other side of the road, you might just be able to make out there, we've got a bus shelter, concrete foundations torn out of the ground, its roof hurled into the garden, along with a number of branches of the house on the terrace on the other side of the road there. So that's just an indication. Initially, the fire brigade thought about 20 properties damaged here. We now think rather more. But it's been mirrored elsewhere in the UK, as you've said. So let's hear this report from Helena Wilkinson.
The violent winds came and went quickly, but as they passed through, they left a trail of devastation, damaging whatever was in its path. Here in Farnborough, the storm hit at around 7 this morning.
There was just huge amount of noise, and my 2 younger sons in the back bedroom were shouting basically that the garage roofs have gone, and within a matter of seconds it was all pretty much over with. We looked at the damage, come outside with a few of my neighbours, found some of the roofs had disappeared, chimney pots gone.
This bus stop completely damaged. The tree that fell onto it also blocked a road for a number of hours. Parts of Luton were hit badly too. Residents described being woken up by a thunderous noise.
A tornado of about 4 metres square came across the gardens. It went over my neighbour's house and made a hole in her roof. It landed in my garden and it took the trampoline up into the air.
I heard the wind was quite strong. I shouted downstairs to my son. I goes, "Mark, that wind's strong, isn't it?" And I went into the toilet, and with that I heard a big rumble. My son was down here, the door flew open and my son had to pull the door back on quick.
And this is a damage in Northampton. When the winds passed through, tiles were flung off roofs. The job of securing the damaged buildings and clearing the debris is now underway. Despite the destruction, there's relief that so far there have been no reports of any injuries. Helena Wilkinson, BBC News.
Well, there was some discussion this morning about whether these were in fact tornadoes. Terry Parrott's under no illusions. Terry sent us some photographs of what he saw when he came out this morning. But Terry, let's take us back to when you first became aware something was wrong.
Well, I was just getting up and there was a terrific roaring sound and the wind just got louder and louder. And when I looked outside, there was just this enormous whirling mass coming towards the area. I watched it pick up some garage roofs and just deposit them all over the road. And then just the devastation around the area was evident. Lots of chimney pots down, roofs off houses, just devastation.
I think we tend to forget, people talk about minor damage. This is minor damage over a big area, and it's going to cost people a lot of money, isn't it?
It will cost people a lot of money. Hopefully everybody's insured, and hopefully the insurance will cover this sort of damage. But it's not something we experience in the UK that often.
You stepped out of your door. What was your immediate reaction when you saw what it had done?
Well, thankfully our house is undamaged, but looking around the neighbourhood, I think my first thought was to go and check that everybody was okay, to make sure that people were safe, and then to try and help people clear up. Because remember, at that stage it was still raining fairly heavily.
Terry, thanks very much indeed. Fire Brigade have been working here all morning, making houses safe. They are now moving away. You might have just caught a glimpse of the clear-up starting there, but the cost of all this, well, nobody really knows, and they won't do for some time yet. Back to you, Sophie.
Robert, thank you very much. And if you've got any pictures or video of the storms or the damage, do send them to us. We'd love to see them. The email address is yourpics@bbc.co.uk. Now, in just over an hour, Gordon Brown makes his first speech to a Labour conference as Prime Minister. He says he wants to talk about crime, health and education. But all the speculation is about whether he's going to call a snap general election. In a series of interviews this morning, Mr Brown refused to rule it out. Instead, he said he was getting on with the job. From Bournemouth, here's our political correspondent James Hardy.
Gordon Brown says it's business as usual, and to prove it, he toured the TV and radio studios to talk about his big speech. But he knows that everyone else at this Labour conference is talking about something else, the date of the next election. And on that, he's characteristically poker-faced.
For 3 months I've been getting on with the job, and my focus is the job. And I think what people want to hear about this week is what we offer the country, what we offer that's for the future, and what we offer that's new policy. And I think anything that diverts from that is something that is not fair to the British people.
Down at the bookies, though, the odds on an autumn election are shortening.
Well, it's absolutely huge sums of money pouring in at the moment, all for the date of the election. As you can see here, just 2 weeks ago, we were 9-2, the election would be called this year. That's into 2-1. It takes big sums of money, that £15,000 a day we're seeing, and it's only the politically very astute punters that are betting.
So amid all the speculation, what do we know as fact? Well, if Gordon Brown chooses to go for an election on October the 25th, he'd have to call it at the latest by October the 2nd. That's next Tuesday in the middle of the Conservative Party conference. If, though, he waits until November the 1st, he'll have to call it at the latest by October the 9th. Either way, we'll know pretty soon. The truth is that despite Labour's healthy showing in the polls, no one in Bournemouth really knows what Mr Brown's planning.
It has to be a general election sometime before June 2010. Exactly when it is a matter for the Prime Minister.
I'd go for it. I think the polls look good. I think he's got a fantastic start against some tremendous difficult situations, from terrorism to foot and mouth and beyond.
Obviously there's fevered speculation around and the polls are extremely good for us, but this week as well we have got a serious job to do, that is to set out our vision for the country for the future.
And the reason delegates are confused, it's a close call either way. The political momentum might dictate going early, but a delay would allow Mr Brown to establish himself as Prime Minister.
I don't think the structural change in British politics, which is the erosion of the Conservatives and the strengthening of Labour, is going to go away in a hurry. So I think you can call it now or you can call it later. I think he's in a good place.
This afternoon's emphasis, though, will be policy. The police will be urged to focus on gun crime, hospital patients will be promised cleaner wards, and parents better schools. It could almost be a manifesto for an election. James Hardy, BBC News, Bournemouth.
Well, let's speak to the Guardian newspaper's political commentator, Michael White. Michael, good afternoon. What do you think then? Are we going to have an election pretty soon?
Well, people down here are very divided about it. MPs and ministers and officials are saying, as Cabinet Minister said to me last night, bring it on, the Tories in disarray, let's do it. But other people say, hang on, wait a minute, there's no need for an election now, it's very risky, we might lose it. If Mr Brown loses it on October the 28th, he'll be the second shortest Prime Minister, 120 days, worst performance since the 1820s, George Canning, and he died, so he had an excuse for leaving office. I'm in the second camp. I think it would be risky, and I don't think the country needs the uncertainty of an election now. Mr Brown's doing pretty well without an election.
He's certainly not ruling it out, though. I mean, do you actually think he's made up his mind?
It's a very lonely job. That bit I sympathise with Gordon Brown, because if you get it wrong, people never forgive you. Jim Callaghan, 1978. Let the speculation run, as Mr. Brown's doing now. Then famously, there was I waiting at the church. We've all seen the conference cutting. And he called it off. Everyone was astonished, not least Margaret Thatcher. I was with her that day. So I sympathise with that bit. Where I don't sympathise with Mr. Brown and his colleagues is where they say, well, we're too busy governing. We're not talking about elections now. It's not true. They are talking about it. They are thinking about it. It's about time they told us which way he's made up his mind.
What are the risks of an autumn election in general?
Well, you've just illustrated one in the top item on the bulletin. We have tornadoes in the south of England. Last week it was Northern Rock. Next week it could be Iraq. At the weekend it was blue tongue disease. We hadn't heard of that a week ago, had we? So events pile in on a Prime Minister. And I'm old enough to remember another Labour Prime Minister, Harold Wilson, very cockily calling a slightly early election June 1970. Sounds a long time ago, only yesterday to me. And in the last Monday of the campaign, I was out with the opposition leader on the campaign stump, name of Ted Heath. He was due to be slaughtered on the Thursday, but the trade figures came out. They were very bad for the government. It looked as if the economy was out of control, and Wilson lost, and Ted Heath became Prime Minister after all.
Michael White, thank you very much.
Not at all.
Now, the amount of money being borrowed by the government is at its highest level for 3 years. In the month of August, the government borrowed just over £9 billion. And so far in this financial year, from April until August, the figure is nearly £20 billion. Well, let's speak to our business correspondent, Hugh Pym. What does this mean? Does it mean trouble ahead?
Well, that £9 billion figure for August is the highest since records began in the early 1990s. Now, it could suddenly lurch back the other way this month or next month. But the key thing, as you said, is for the first 5 months of the financial year, it's more than 19 billion for government borrowing already. Now, their forecast for the full financial year is 34 billion. So at this rate, they're on course to go well over that target, which is something they don't really need. The Treasury, I have to say, point out things often come right in the second half of the year. Businesses pay more tax and so on. They're saying they can still hit their target. Many people in the markets don't believe it.
And so if they don't, what are the wider implications of it?
Well, first of all, the new Chancellor, Alistair Darling, is inheriting all this, obviously, from Gordon Brown. Worsening public finances, we can see here. He's got to do his big statement, the pre-budget report, probably the middle of October, and the spending review for the next 3 years. It's not going to make his job any easier. These borrowing figures have been run up at a time of pretty strong economic growth, when tax receipts should have been flooding in. What's going to happen next year when many commentators say economic growth will slow up quite a lot because of all the financial turbulence we've been seeing? So it does mean serious problems for the government, and at least one economics commentator, without any hotline into number 10, I have to say, has said this is another reason why Gordon Brown might want to have an early election.
Hugh, thank you very much. Police in Hampshire who've been searching for a missing teenager, Rosemary Edwards, say a body has been found. The discovery was made in the New Forest. The body hasn't been formally identified. Police say there don't appear to be any suspicious circumstances. Rosemary hadn't been seen since leaving home after an argument with her parents. Detectives in West Yorkshire are questioning 2 men about the fatal stabbing of a 4-year-old boy. The child's sister was also seriously hurt. Officers say the attack in Slathwaite near Huddersfield was not random. The spokesman for Kate and Jerry McCann has refused to comment on reports that they've hired their own investigators to try to find their missing daughter Madeline. Clarence Mitchell said the couple had spent the weekend talking to lawyers about their defence case. Now, for the 6th day in a row, thousands of Buddhist monks and civilians have been taking part in rallies against the military rule in Burma. In the latest protest, as many as 100,000 people marched through the city of Yangon. The British ambassador in Burma has said the country is entering uncharted territory. Andrew Harding reports from neighbouring Thailand.
Brushing aside decades of fear and repression, Burma is rising up. Led by Buddhist monks, the population has taken to the streets en masse, a show of defiance unthinkable just a few weeks ago. Their bold demand a peaceful end to military rule. But how will the generals respond? With bullets or bargaining?
We are clearly in uncharted territory now as to what's going to happen, and there are a number of scenarios that might play out. Firstly, the demonstrations could subside. I mean, that's looking less and less likely by the day. Secondly, that we could see some sort of counter-reaction, which I've said would would be a disaster, although in terms of probability it I'm afraid ranks quite high.
For now, the momentum is with the marchers, their ranks swelled by nuns, celebrities and opposition MPs. Could this woman be next? Burma's democracy icon Aung San Suu Kyi has been under house arrest for years, but on Saturday the monks were allowed a brief encounter with her on her doorstep.
In our country, the monks are the highest moral authority of the society, and then when the monks take the leading role, in the movement, and then people would follow, eventually.
All eyes are now on Burma's reclusive generals. China is urging them to show restraint, to stabilise the situation. But on the ground, events are moving fast and the tension is growing. Andrew Harding, BBC News, Bangkok.
In the last few minutes, Britain's fastest speeding motorist has been sentenced to 10 weeks in jail. Timothy Brady was clocked by police travelling at 172 miles an hour in a Porsche along a road in Oxfordshire. Well, Daniel Bircher is at Oxford Crown Court now. First of all, what actually happened?
Well, Tim Brady actually pleaded guilty to this offence a month ago, but he was back in court today. I think we can see him arriving there. He is the younger man wearing the glasses. He was back here to hear the judge's sentence, which was 10 weeks in jail. Now, if I take you back to the story of this, it happened in January. Brady had asked his boss whether he could borrow a Porsche 911, which was in the forecourt, whether he could take it for a spin. He was told he couldn't. Still, the next day, he did take that car out, and he was clocked on a stretch of dual carriageway travelling at 172 miles an hour. Police officers who stopped him at a roundabout said that the car was travelling so fast when he braked it was actually juddering. And this is, as you say now, the fastest that anybody has been convicted for. And the judge said before sentencing that he had been not only a danger to himself and his passenger, but also to the innocent who might be using that road. He said the plain fact is that your driving was criminally self-indulgent and utterly thoughtless.
And he's got 10 weeks in jail compared to other motoring offences. I mean, how severe is that?
Well, there was a previous case where a motorist had been travelling at 156 miles an hour. In that case, the sentence was 5 months in jail. There has also been another conviction which was faster, 175 miles an hour, but that was on a motorbike. Now, the court heard today, to put this into further context, that someone travelling at 172 miles an hour would need a stopping distance of more than 500 metres, or about 125 car lengths.
Daniel, thank you very much. The time's coming up to 1:20. Our top story this lunchtime. Freak storms have caused damage across a swathe of central and southern England. And coming up, a snapshot of life, how your family photos could become part of history.
Later on BBC London, the stately home that played host to a royal honeymoon gets a multi-million-pound makeover. And autumn winds with a difference. Peter will be here to assess the latest unpredictable weather. All that in 15 minutes. Join us then.
Farmers in Suffolk are waiting for the results of tests which will show whether the blue tongue virus is spreading among sheep and cattle herds. One cow has already tested positive for the disease. Meanwhile, officials are also investigating another suspected case of foot and mouth, this time on the border of Hampshire and Sussex. If confirmed, it'll be the first case of foot and mouth outside Surrey since the outbreak. Here's Jeremy Cook.
If Britain's foot and mouth plagued farmers thought things couldn't get any worse, they were wrong. On this rare breeds farm this weekend, vets confirmed a case of blue tongue, the first known instance in this country of a disease with the potential to devastate our livestock industry. As neighbouring farmers anxiously check their stock, there's still hope that this case could be a one-off, not a major outbreak.
Normally we would just put them in the shed overnight, unless they looked ill, and observe them next morning, and they'd normally be as right as rain. But because of the blue tongue outbreak next door, we thought we'd better get them tested to see if it possibly was blue tongue. It would be foolish not to.
Unlike foot and mouth, blue tongue is not spread from animal to animal. Rather, it's midges, tiny biting insects, which carry the disease. That means it's almost impossible to control, and so senior vets are now warning Britain's farmers they may simply have to live with the condition that can kill up to 40% of infected animals. The big question now is, how did blue tongue get here and how has it spread? Well, the strain of disease picked up in Suffolk has been carried by midges originally from Africa. It's thought unusually warm winds have spread the insects to northern Europe, and it's likely the same process has carried blue tongue onto Britain. In Suffolk then, teams of vets are on the ground checking for any more cases.
People are now being very vigilant, which is fine, and they're reporting anything off colour that might possibly be blue tongue in cattle or sheep. So we'll be very busy just taking samples.
Adding to the sense of disquiet, a suspected case of foot and mouth in West Sussex. A temporary control zone is in place. DEFRA insists, just a precaution. Jeremy Cook, BBC News, Suffolk.
With me is Professor Philip Meller of the Institute for Animal Health. Good afternoon. This is very new in Northern Europe, isn't it?
It's extremely new. 2006 was the first outbreak that's ever been recorded in Northern Europe, and that has recrudesced in 2007.
And is it because of warmer temperatures, global warming, some may say, that the insects are coming up here?
Almost certainly that sort of thing. Traditionally, the virus is found around the world in a broad band stretching about as far north as the latitude of Madrid, but not previously further north than that. But because we've had a succession of really warm years, the African species of midge, which transmits the virus very well in Africa, has expanded northwards to occupy the whole of the northern parts of the Mediterranean basin. But the midges that are transmitting the virus in Northern Europe are different to that species of midge. They are ones which are indigenous to this area and have never previously been involved with blue tongue virus transmission.
So if we had a frosty winter, for example, would that get rid of it in Northern Europe?
That would be an answer to many prayers. The insects which transmit the virus further north have not previously been involved in transmitting the virus because they are relatively poorly able to transmit the virus compared with the African species. But the virus is transmitted better at higher temperatures. So the higher the temperature, the more efficient these insects are at transmitting the virus. Therefore, the converse is also true. The lower the temperature, the least likely these midges are to transmit the virus. And very cold temperatures, the virus won't be transmitted at all. And of course, the adult insects disappear by and large in the winter months.
Professor Meller, thank you very much for explaining all that. Now, police are investigating the possibility that a car which collided head-on with another vehicle was racing a motorbike. 5 people died in the crash, 2 children in one car and 3 men in their 20s in the other. A 17-year-old man has been arrested. From Derbyshire, Mark Simpson reports.
2 children and 3 young men, all killed in a head-on collision. All the victims lived close to where they died, on this country road in North Derbyshire. The 3 young men were travelling in a Ford Sierra which came down that hill and collided with a family car which was travelling in the opposite direction. Police are investigating the theory that the Sierra was involved in a race with a motorcycle.
I can tell you that a motorcyclist has been arrested and is currently on bail that may be able to assist with the inquiry, but we're keeping an open mind at this moment in time. We don't know whether excessive speed or what has caused it, but we're obviously doing a thorough investigation to make sure that we get to the bottom of this tragedy.
The boys who died were aged 4 and 7. Their mother survived, as did a 12-year-old boy. All 5 victims died at the scene.
It's a tragedy, what shouldn't have happened. But it's a danger trap, this road. I mean, accidents have happened here before.
Lots of people have complained over years regarding speed being a 60. I mean, they've got the hill there and they come speeding down and it's treated like a racetrack. I think it should be for at least 40. It's only when something like this happens they'll say, oh yeah, right, yeah, we'll look into it now. A bit late for that now, isn't it?
It's a long, straight country road, but it does have a number of hidden dips. Although there have been accidents here before, nothing like this. Mark Simpson, BBC News, Shuttlewood, near Chesterfield.
The Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad has arrived in New York at the start of a controversial visit to the United States. Protesters demonstrated at Columbia University, where he will speak later today. Mr. Ahmadinejad will address the United Nations tomorrow. In an interview for American television, he said his country is not seeking to build a nuclear bomb.
It is a firm no. I'm going to be much firmer now. In political relations right now, the nuclear bomb is of no use. If it was useful, it would have prevented the downfall of the Soviet Union. If it was useful, it would have resolved the problems the Americans have in Iraq. The time of the bomb is past.
Mahmoud Ahmadinejad speaking in America. Now, if you're just about to get on with the household chores, find yourself a camera and you could become part of history. For the next 7 days, all of us are being asked to take photographs of what we get up to at home to capture the ordinary and sometimes the extraordinary face of British life in the 21st century. Here's Razia Iqbal.
Capturing images for posterity. Will McCrum from Belfast is a keen photographer. In this instance, the subject is his brother Jay. He is an obvious participant in a national photography project called UK at Home, launched today. The project hopes to galvanise people to take pictures which will show the face of contemporary British domestic life. These snapshots of America form the largest photography event in the United States. It's the template for the UK project. Alongside leading photographers, people will be invited to take pictures which capture the emotions of home.
Imagine if you found a book today in your great-grandparents' attic with what life in the UK was like 100 years ago, before electricity, before television, before VCRs and cell phones. How interesting it would be to actually see that with the stories told by everyday people, not by the media, not by Hollywood.
Breakfast before the school run. Dodd Miller is a commercial photographer. These pictures of his children Alfie and Lily are just the kind of thing the project is looking for. And they're exactly the kind of thing people tend not to bother with.
People will photograph their weddings and a birthday, but all the bits in between, they're going to school, they're going to the park, playing football, whatever, they never record. And in 20 years' time, they'll look back at that as a memory, but it won't be a photograph of it.
The time when people felt intimidated by cameras and photography has long gone. The digital age means everyone now feels that they can take a good picture, and this project will encourage that.
UK at Home homepage.
This is a project which reflects how much technology has advanced and how easily accessible it can be. Only pictures taken digitally can be submitted, and at some stage the pictures will eventually be available in an old-fashioned book. Razia Iqbal, BBC News.
And now more on this morning's wild weather. And in case you missed it, here's what it felt like to be under one of those squalls. This is the BBC weather forecaster, Louise Lear, on Breakfast this morning.
That rain really extensive. It will be clearing away from the London area, over the next couple of hours, probably clearing the southeast, or I'll just have to dish that. Clearing the southeast by around 9 o'clock in the morning now.
Poor Louise. Well, Robin Kelby is safely inside the studio. There's some discussion about whether or not these were actually tornadoes.
There is, you're right, because the only evidence we've got so far that they were tornadoes is pictures of damage. There's no videos I'm aware of any spinning cloud, and to be honest, that damage could have been caused by a line squall, which is what hit Louise, to be honest, just then.
Right, and how frequent, though, is this kind of weather? I mean, it was pretty extreme. It's done an awful lot of damage.
It's when you change seasons, of course, you get the biggest contrasts in temperature, and that tends to produce them, and that's exactly what we had this morning. And it was not just Louise got caught in the Blue Peter Garden, of course. I mean, if you look behind me, this is what the radar picked up this morning. Anywhere from Cornwall to the borders of Scotland, that is the line squall. On that, the gusts were up to 60 miles an hour. The temperature dropped from one side to the other by 5 or 6 degrees, and the wind changed violently in direction. As you see now, it's out over the North Sea. It's all gone. But it was a violent introduction to autumn. And the isobars that now are over us are quite close together, so the winds are still fairly strong. And the bigger picture, if you follow them up, they go right up to the North Pole. That is our future weather in the next couple of days. Sounds frightening? Not as bad as all that. Whilst the violence has gone now, we're talking about areas of sunshine and areas of showers. The showers probably concentrated in Lancashire, Cumbria and the western side of Scotland, because the wind is quite a brisk westerly wind, and at 14 degrees, if you stand in that in Glasgow, it just doesn't feel particularly warm. Same is true for Belfast. There's sunshine between the showers, and if you're lucky, you get more of the sunshine than the showers. You won't necessarily be that lucky in Aberystwyth, nor indeed up the Bristol Channel, and we've had hail reported already in Cornwall and bits of Devon. These showers here have been quite pokey. you might just about hear thunder this afternoon. But much of southern England and the Midlands and East Anglia, I think, will endure the rest of the day in sunshine with a breeze and with 5 degrees lower temperatures than this time yesterday. Overnight tonight, with the breeze still flowing, it will not be that cold, 9 or 10 degrees. But it's Tuesday, remember, where the wind turns in its direction towards the northwest. Not immediately, so tomorrow's start of the day, tomorrow's rush hour in London will be rather a benign affair. Light westerly breeze, a bit of sunshine, 11 degrees. A few showers in northern England, the breeze turning round to the northwest here, but not particularly strong, 10 degrees still. And in Scotland, well, a gathering of showers in the northwest Highlands. But even at this time of the morning, it's 8 degrees in Lerwick. So the real cold air has not come in. It's the direction of the wind and its increasing strength that will be a little telling as the day goes on. Because so far, the only story I can tell you is sunshine and showers and nothing violent. 11 degrees to start the day in Cardiff is 52, and you've still got the showers on the coast of Cornwall and Devon. That's 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Tomorrow then passes as a day of sunshine and showers, some of them pretty big, I have to say. In the afternoon, you could well hear thunder or feel hail. They're pretty big showers, particularly in southern England, but the feel in the wind is the thing you'll notice. At similar temperatures to today's, 13 or 14, and a cold wind on your back, you'll think autumn is definitely here. And it is.
I thought that this morning. Thank you very much, Rob. At 1:30, a reminder of our top story. Violent storms have damaged scores of houses in central and southern England. And still to come on News 24 in the next half hour, a roundup of all the business news and all the day's sport, including Arsenal have become the country's richest football club after their move to a new stadium. That's all from the 1 o'clock news this lunchtime, so it's goodbye from me. And on BBC One, we now join the BBC's news teams where you are. Bye-bye.
Welcome to BBC London News. The forecasters are debating whether it really was a tornado, but whatever it's called, for residents in Luton, its impact was certainly felt. Roof tiles were blown off and outside furniture ended up in neighbours' gardens. Well, Matthew Morris is there for us this lunchtime. Matt, what more can you tell us?
Well, police were called just after 7:20 this morning by a resident here in Mallard Gardens, Luton, to report of fences being ripped up and taken in the air. If we go into this garden, we can see the hole left by that fence, and we can see a large trampoline that's been taken from that garden across this garden over there. Above us we can't quite see them, but there are tiles that have been taken off some of the roofs, and other fences in these gardens, as you look around, they've been damaged. Well, the resident who contacted police is with me now, Ruth. Describe to us what you saw this morning.
I saw a funnel of whirling wind. It was a tornado. It was about 4 metres square. It came down into the gardens. It went on my neighbour's roof. It lifted our trampoline. It sounded like a jet engine of an aeroplane. And,
how long did it last for?
It lasted about 10 seconds, literally 10 seconds. When the trampoline went up in the air, higher than the house, my daughter and myself fled for cover into the bathroom.
I was going to ask you, there's not extensive damage, but there is obviously damage to the garden furniture and the area around, and you were with your daughter, and there are children who live in this property.
Yes.
Quite clearly a lucky escape.
Yes, it was, yeah. I'm actually a weather watcher myself, and I was absolutely fascinated. The chances of having a tornado in your garden doesn't happen every day.
OK, Ruth, we'll let you get back to the clear-up. Thanks very much. There is some discussion with meteorologists this afternoon as to whether it was a tornado or something that's called a line squall, which is very strong winds going in different directions, changing direction very quickly, in effect having the same devastating impact that a tornado can have. So while that discussion goes on as to what it actually was, clearly here people are going to have to be concerned with fixing fences, removing things like this trampoline from the garden, and quite frankly, all they'll be concerned about is whether they can get the insurance to cover any damage.
Matt, thanks very much. Well, the weather also caused problems for commuters this morning. Some services were cancelled or badly delayed, and in King's Cross, overrunning engineering work on the tube and signal failures only added to the problems. Well, you can keep up to date on all the travel news in the capital on our radio station, BBC London 94.9 FM, and on our website. Police are renewing appeals for information a year after a man was shot dead in a nightclub in King's Cross. 22-year-old Daniel Ross was attacked in the Scala nightclub. CCTV footage taken at the time shows Daniel entering the club. Police are now offering a £20,000 reward for anyone who may have seen something that night. Mayor Ken Livingstone is appearing at 3 fringe events at the Labour Party conference in Bournemouth today. He's due to speak about the oil deal struck with the Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez to provide cheap fuel for London's buses. Now, could Greenwich become the 3rd area of London to get the congestion charge? The council had asked Transport for London to look at ways of reducing traffic in the town centre and around the Blackwall Tunnel. Some residents say they'll fight against any congestion charge south of the river, but others say they can't wait for the traffic to stop, as Aisha Butcher reports.
Diffused and not organised. We have time to get organised on this, so that's what must be done.
Rallying opposition against another possible congestion charge.
Aggressive taxation, and that's all it is. The congested area.
Residents at this public meeting in Blackheath are anticipating the announcement of potential road pricing in their area.
Parking, we have to pay £40 for our car now to park outside. All coming now, so we don't want any more charges.
I'm a working woman. I don't want to pay £6 a day to go to work. I think you'd be pricing the working man out of a job if that was to happen.
Well, clearly we will try to get people to make representations to their elected representatives, whether it's Ken Livingstone or their local councillors, because these are the people who will decide.
The annual Car Free Day in Greenwich is designed to show local people just how nice life can be without vehicles on the road. But it only covers one small area of the borough, and a proposed congestion zone could go much further. Opinion here on whether it should be introduced is mixed.
It would be all right, actually. It would probably help because it gets really busy on the road up there, and in the mornings you can hardly get through. I cycle myself.
It'd be much safer. The roads are really dangerous with the cars, especially with children.
And a lot of people come down here to see the old things going on, and by them extending the congestion charge, it will actually make people not to come.
It's because of the contraflow changing that has made the traffic build up in Greenwich, making it even worse and forcing people to say, well, actually, yes, we should have a congestion charge.
I love living here, but the worst thing about it is the traffic, and I don't think the roads can take it. So.
And these were the roads around Greenwich's historic town centre just the day before. Greenwich Council declined an interview with BBC London, but in a statement said they expect to receive the outcome of TfL's research later this autumn. They'll then consult with local residents and businesses before coming to a final decision. Aisha Baksh, BBC London News.
Sport, and Arsenal are now the richest football club in Britain. Their latest figures show the turnover has risen to £200 million. The Emirates Stadium has helped enormously, bringing in £3 million a game. That's twice the amount Highbury generated. And with the Gunners at the top of the Premier League, they say there's no need for further foreign investment.
We think it's very important as a board that a club develops from the revenues it generates itself and is not dependent upon people putting money in every year, because that's not a very stable basis from which to run a club. And we regard ourselves as custodians of this club and fans of the club as well. And we hope the club, and we know the club's going to go on for many more hundreds of years.
Now, one of the most famous historic buildings in England has been saved from disrepair and given a multi-million-pound facelift. Luton Hoo, an 18th century mansion, has been redeveloped as a luxury hotel and opens its doors later this month. The Grade 1 listed building was featured in the film Four Weddings and a Funeral, and the Queen spent part of her honeymoon there. Sarah Harris has more.
It's an emotional time for Zena Dickinson, seeing the grand old house she's lovingly looked after for more than 20 years brought back to its best. She joined as an assistant to the Phillips family, but stayed on to keep the crumbling Grade 1 mansion going until it was eventually bought out and restored.
I feel very privileged to have been at Luton Hoo. I've never ever wanted to give over that I'm lady of the manor, but Keith Hersey, who is the head gardener here, he and I used to say we are looking after her, and we used to call her her. It's a bit like looking after an ageing relative. We had to nurse her through, we had to hold her together with string, sealing wax, and particularly with the plumbing and the wiring, which were decidedly dodgy.
The renovation has cost £60 million, and it's been a complicated business. Many of the tapestries have been painstakingly copied, but the hotel group which has taken over the old house was determined to keep it as close as possible to the way it was when the Queen honeymooned here in the 1940s.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to work on a project of this size and magnitude, but also something of this stature. It's something that I'll probably never get the opportunity to do again, to convert a Grade 1 listed mansion. It's something that, you know, the buzz around the place, from the contractors right through to the kitchen porters, is tremendous.
Over the years, the house has been home to Russian royalty and friends of kings and prime ministers. In recent years, it's been used as a set for films like 4 Weddings and a Funeral and Eyes Wide Shut. It was on this spot in 1948 that Winston Churchill famously spoke in front of a local crowd of 110,000 people. He was thanking them for their efforts during World War II, when this place was used as an army headquarters. The Luton Hoo Hotel opens at the end of the month. Sarah Harris, BBC London News.
Looks great. Well, let's find out what's going on the weather, and we've all been talking about it. Was it a tornado, Pete?
Well, it's unusual, Louisa, to get a tornado when you haven't got a thunderstorm around, and there was no thunder and lightning reported this morning. You might cast your mind back to the Kensal Rise tornado. Thunder and lightning reported just before that arrived in West London. Let's have a look at the morning satellite picture, because you can see this very dark ribbon of cloud on the right-hand side there. Most likely it was a line squall. So called because you get a line of really sharp showers moving through. Very heavy rain, very strong winds will creep down underneath the cloud. And take a look at the local radar from this morning. You can see the bright colours. Here it comes, 7 o'clock this morning, moving through the London area at 8, 9, 10 o'clock out of the way. Now we're going to remember the strong winds changing direction very quickly, which is what Matthew was talking about at the beginning, causing problems. Later on this week, though, a bit more settled. Sun and showers, but some chilly nights to come. So as far as this afternoon's concerned, well, it is a bit blowy, but I don't think we'll get another line squall. I don't think we should have any problems with any tornadoes this afternoon. A few showers moving through on that blustery west-south-westerly wind. A few showers to the south of London overnight tonight, but I think for most of us it will end up a dry night. Quite a chilly night. Temperatures in the city and the towns in double figures, but dipping into single figures out in the countryside. And then tomorrow, a bright start, but it won't take long for the showers to get going. Some of those showers are likely to be quite heavy tomorrow. Blustery winds again tomorrow, pushing those showers quickly across the London area, with top temperatures of 16, which is 61 degrees Fahrenheit. Middle bit of the week, it looks as though we should have high pressure over us, so a mostly dry day, but later on in the week, a weak weather front is likely to bring us cloudy skies and a bit more rain. Back to you, Louisa.
Thanks for that, Pete. Well, on the programme tonight, we're live at the Labour conference in Bournemouth, where a political row's brewing over Crossrail, and the Communities Secretary makes her feelings clear about Boris Johnson.
The last thing a modern, diverse, international class capital like London needs is a fogeyish, bigoted and upper-class twit for its mayor.
Well, Riz will be here with that and more at 6:30. But for now, from everyone on the lunchtime team, do have a great afternoon. Goodbye.
Sky tells Boyd about her feelings for Caleb in Neighbours next. A patient gets taken for a ride at the doctor's, and a raid on Wall Street involves Jessica's finances at 2:35.
Find out about London. Could cheap flights be the death of this ancient forest?
Well, I'm glad we don't have to stuff them through the letterbox, that's all I can say. Shall we?
How a paper produced from an East End living room is taking on the world's music press.
Well, I think we better go winner, because I'm being very optimistic today.
And the female jockeys fighting for a place in the lineup. Join me.